I was pretty well copied in to every email sent to you and Dina Romero. So I know an awful lot of people were concerned about whether or not Baines would award a tender as far as the approach golf course is concerned. Were you surprised at the amount of feeling generated over this?
So the approach golf course has been in the care of the council for nearly 150 years, and golf only started there just before World War II. It's a much loved site, and what I hadn't realised was just the number of people that use it but that don't play golf. So we were not surprised by how much affection it's held in, but we were surprised. I was a little bit surprised about the strength of feeling about disc golf as opposed to ordinary traditional golf.
Now, tenders are a private affair for various reasons that I'm sure you'll explain later, but word got out that there was going to be Frisbee Golf, which are some sort of little flying discs that whiz everywhere. And this wasn't going down too well, was it?
No, there was a lot of concern, and some people thought that these discs were made of metal, and so therefore were very dangerous. Other people just thought it wasn't appropriate. Other people thought that there was no similarity at all between disc golf and traditional golf. So there were a lot of concerns that people had, and that we were listening to. A lot of people actually also just wanted the place completely non-commercialized. A large number of the emails I got said, don't commercialize the High Common. Now, they might have not thought of the golf before as commercialization, but that was a franchise, and so it was a commercial operation on public land. But the message was very strong from a very large number of my correspondents that they didn't approve of commercialization of the High Common.
Now, there wasn't exactly a rush of applicants to tender to take this over, was there? You only had one.
Yes, well, that's one more than we got last time. The previous administration also tendered it, and they got none. We got one final tender, but we did also get 2 or 3 people looking seriously at putting a tender in, and then for a number of reasons deciding not to proceed with the tender.
It does seem to suggest that other than some form of novelty golf like Frisbee Golf, that any sort of application that involves more traditional golf can't see itself returning a profit. So maybe, you've decided to pause, which is what a lot of these people wanted you to do. Maybe during that pause, you might consider a different treatment for this portion of land. I mean, it's adjoining Royal Victoria Park, cannot be absorbed into the park.
Right. So there's a lot of points you've raised there in that thing, in that sort of question. There's a lot of points. One is that I think people didn't really understand the amount of infrastructure that's involved in a golf course, and therefore the infrastructure for a disc golf course is more visible. In fact, it's not just a flagpole, it's a pole with a metal net on it. Other than that, it's very similar, and that metal pole is held in place with the concrete plug. So we got a lot of concern about structures all over the High Common. I think that might have been based on the fact that people hadn't looked at it. If you go on the web and look at disc golf, you'll see that it's a very popular sport that's growing in popularity across the world, and it's very skillful as well. But you have, like any sport, you have different levels of skill. One of the reasons why the council got into golf in the first place was because if you go back 50, 60 years, a lot of people perceived that golf clubs were not welcoming to all sections of society. And that is something that, in particularly women, for instance, but that is something that now is complete history. Anyone wanting to take up golf now will find that all our golf clubs are very welcoming, and a very large number of them actually welcome day visitors because, you know, they need the trade as much as any other leisure facility or club. So there's been a lot of things that have changed in the golfing world over the last 50 years, which is also a factor into it. But also the council has declared a climate and a biological emergency. And to run a golf course, you're spraying 3 sets of chemicals all over the fairways and greens. Now, some of those are neutral, but one of them at least has a chemical that is causing great concern to the World Health Organization for its impact on drinking water. And another one is glyphosate, which is something that we as a council are trying to get rid of in every place that we can because of the concerns that people have it. So we are gradually reducing our use of glyphosate to purely dangerous weeds like giant hogsweed along the Two Tunnels path, for instance. You know, plants that don't respond to anything else, but which if you touch them can cause you quite bad rashes. So, you know, there's all of these factors in play, and added to which the infrastructure for the golf was completely worn out and would have required a lot of investment to put it back. So I think those are the sort of reasons why golf didn't proceed. But as I said, a lot of people said pause, a lot of people said rest, and a lot of people very strongly made, you know, no commercialization. And so I think what we've done in this period of pause and rest is we've got time to look at it and think about it and just give everyone a rest for a couple of years over this, because they had this in 2015, which didn't proceed because no one bid. They've had it in 2020, you know, so we can look at this problem in future. Treatments for golf courses change over time, but we can then see what the impact of not putting these chemicals down is on the return of birds and bees and insects, which are really vital for the whole of life.
Yeah, all of that sounds wonderful. And for people who just want to use that green space to relax in or take their dog for a walk, I'm sure they're going to be very grateful that you have decided to pause for, as you say, a year or two. But you haven't answered my question. I said, isn't it just a simple matter of absorbing it into Royal Victoria Park? And there it is then under a separate budget.
Yes, we will. That is in my speech on the budget. I actually did raise that point that the budget will now have to be slightly adjusted because we have to look at the budget was made assuming that we were going to proceed. We're now not proceeding, so there is a budget impact. So that is being evaluated. I think that's classed as a small change, but we should have that ready by the time we present the budget to full council. So you're quite right, that is being accommodated, and there will be a small change in the budget. So it won't be exactly the budget we passed at full cabinet, and that was highlighted in my speech.
So you're saying for the time being, for the next couple of years at least, the High Common is unofficially passed.
Will be treated like a park.
Sorry?
It'll be treated like a park.
As part of
Royal, considered as a park, yeah.
As part of Royal Victoria Park.
Well, it might still have its own budget heading. We'll probably keep its own budget heading because if you know, a future council wants to look again, it's very useful to have the facts at your hand as opposed to having it lost completely within an RVP budget. So we will probably keep it as a separate heading, but it will be managed under parks.
Okay. Now, this particular tender, there was no consultation before you put it out to tender for whatever reasons. But now I'm just wondering whether you could use this pause period to actually ask the general public what suggestions they might have for its future, the approach golf course future.
Well, so first thing is that we've made a decision, nothing's happening. So it will be parkland, which means that we've got across, as you look upwards from Royal Victoria Park, there's a 12-hole on the left, and there's an 18-hole on the right. So the 18-hole has got several public rights of way across it, and it's very popular with dog walkers, joggers, and a variety of exercises. So the dog walkers had to, and this has been a running dispute that goes back several years about dogs being kept on leads. There will now be none of that necessary, and so a lot of people will be able to easily enjoy it. And as Councillor Ball said, several of his friends have now started visiting it because they don't have to worry about being hit by a golf ball. And one of the points that were made by several speakers that a frisbee can hit you. Well, a golf ball can hit you, and a golf ball is harder than a frisbee.
But you seem to be suggesting that as the high common becomes more popular, as it will now, there is no golf to worry about. People are not going to want that situation to change, are they, in the future?
Well, that's a question for a future consultation. I think at the moment we've listened, and the very clear message was pause, reflect, and no commercialization. You know, that those were very clear messages. We've got a lot of business to do. You asked why we didn't do a consultation. I haven't answered that bit yet. We in the start of last year. Sorry, it's last year now, isn't it? At the start of last year, when the pandemic gripped the nation and gripped the world, we moved very quickly as a council for an emergency budget. And it was at that time that we thought, well, we've got to look at all the places where we're losing money. And that's why it started. I made the mistake of thinking that I would get a golf bid because we had one person that was very interested. And therefore, I thought that if we only got a disc golf bid as well as a golf bid, we'd have had two to compare. And I came to the conclusion, and all the residents would say I came to the wrong conclusion on this, that I thought that disc golf was very similar to traditional golf. And therefore, there was, you know, you wouldn't ask if you were going to change a football pitch to a hockey pitch or a rugby pitch. And that was my thinking. On Entry Hill, we had a consultation because we said everything's possible. You know, we can have radical change here as long as it is within the context of public open space. And so we had much more variety of things that were quite simply very traditional and different. So one of the other things, we've had 2 or 3 days of snows, and people said, oh, we can toboggan now. Well, you could have tobogganed there anyway with disc golf or traditional golf, because when you've got snow on the ground, people aren't playing golf by and large. They're all tobogganing.
Well, a lot of people are going to be thinking, well, make hay while the sun shines and enjoy using the high common for the next couple of years without the threat of a frisbee or a golf ball hitting them. But look, you've brought up Entry Hill, which has been a bit overshadowed by all the shenanigans surrounding the approach golf course. You did hold a public consultation, as you said, on Entry Hill, and you did have quite a few tenders coming in, a few bidders. You've gone for tender E, but you won't tell us who that is and what they're proposing. Why is that?
Well, as Richard Samuels mentioned in his speech on, and you can catch it up on the YouTube if you want to just get his words correct. When you go into an OJU process, you are bound by confidentiality, and you're not allowed to discuss.
Sorry to interrupt, Paul. What's an OG?
When this all started, because the law, although we've left Europe, we've not yet changed all the laws that we need to do to do that. So an OJU process is something that meets European standards for competitive tendering, so that it's an open process that is open for everyone to bid for. I don't know what it, don't ask me what it stands for, but EU is the OJEU, so it'll be something to do with that. So, you know, perhaps the next time we go to a tender process on anything, we might well be operating under different legislation if the government has got the changes by then. I mean, the government has a lot on its plate at the moment, so I don't think changing tendering processes for councils is high on the agenda. But at the moment, we have to tender using these rules. And these rules state that once you go into the tender process, you are not allowed to discuss the contents of the bid or while the process is in place. Sorry, I'll say that again. You're not allowed to discuss the contents of the bid while you're in a tender negotiation. When you make the award, you then have what's called a 10-day standstill period. And that is to allow the other bidders who haven't been a successful one to, if they wish, challenge the decision. So again, you can't comment until you've gone through that 10-day period. So I actually can't comment on the contents of the individual bids on the entry hill until we've gone through that 10-day process, because everything is still in a state of confidentiality, because the other bidders can challenge the decision we reached or make inquiries about it.
Okay, after those 10 days, Paul, then we will learn what it is they're offering and what it is you've accepted. But in the meantime, do you think you're happy with it? Obviously, because you've accepted that particular tender. But how happy do you think the people of Bath will be with it?
If we go back to the consultation that we had on Entry Hill, we had a very successful consultation. It was one of the most successful consultations we've had, and all advocates for all the sports that are involved were equally passionate about their sport and their desire to keep whatever it was they were doing or weren't doing, but wanted to do on there. You know, there's a lot of passion in this. I think, as you know, sport creates strong passions. You just have to look at football fans and rugby fans following their clubs. Sport is a passionate area of people's life. And so we had a lot of very strong feelings, a lot of very committed views. But we also had quite a wide-ranging brief. So I was delighted that for once we got a lot of young people taking part in the consultation. One of the issues we have in council consultations is that, you know, you can really count the people under 40 that take part on one hand in a lot of consultations. On this one, we had a very significant number of young people, you know, from 11 upwards, all looking and putting forward their views about what they would like to see there. So that was a huge success. Now, one of the things that we got thrown against us was that a lot of people from outside B&NES joined in the consultation. And there's no way we can stop that. But we did have 2 public consultations at the Entry Hill site or nearby. And that was all local people. We had about, I can't remember the exact figures, but over 800 people, and they were all local to it. Out of the 3,500 responses we got all together, nearly 1,800 were from local postcodes. That is from Bath and North East Somerset, the vast majority of which surrounded Entry Hill. And the finding from that was the same as the one before. You know, we got a very large response in favour of a bike-led facility. We've got a very large response in favour of just returning it to making it a park. And one of the things that I think is publicly known, because they advertised it, was that one of the options was for a sculpture park. And we got also a significant input for people who wanted golf there. Out of those 3, the bikes came first, the sculpture or general park came second, and golf came third. So those things are in the public domain, and they were considered. The bid that we've accepted takes a range of facilities and opportunities that it's going to incorporate into the bid. And so there'll be a variety of activities that are available on there. And I do know that during lockdown and no golf, we've had a lot of people enjoying walking around it. And that will continue. People will be able to walk their dogs around it, as has been happening. And we'll have a range of activities available. And we have the opportunity to address the climate emergency.
Fantastic. And you're hopeful, or are you saying that some at least of the suggestions made by the public during those 2 consultations might actually come to fruition through Tender E.
They will, yes. Several of the points made by several people will be incorporated into Tender E.
Paul, that's a very positive note to end this, and people who may have viewed this all the way through will know that you've been incredibly kind to me today, because we did this all earlier and I didn't actually record it. So thank you for your patience and your time, Councillor Crossley.